Hello there and welcome to another tier list video, Robot Wars tier list video I should say. And wait a minute, this isn't Series 2, this is the German Series. Well, why am I doing the German Series? Well, like I said earlier in Series 1's tier list video, basically, because there are some shows which have so many robots and some shows which have so little robots, I might not do this in order. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to try and prioritize the shorter ones and move on to the much longer ones later on because... honest to God, it's going to be a pain in the ass to get through Series 3, 4, and 7 in particular. But the German Wars only has 12 robots, so it's pretty easy to rank. And let's be honest now, the German Wars was completely awful. Like, in every sense of the word. Like, it was absolutely awful. Like, Heat A in particular, one of the worst Robot Wars episodes of all time. In fact, it probably is the worst Robot Wars episode of all time because none of the robots worked. That's all I'm gonna say. So we're off to a great start. So let's just rank these robots. This is basically like going from the most shit to the least shit. This is not going to be a positive list. All I'm gonna say. But starting off the list is Arena Killer, or Absolute Craft Shank, I believe it's called. Arena Killer appeared in the Dutch series, and Arena Killer was a very basic robot. It's a very basic design, very basic functionality. It just was a little lifter flipper robot, and you know, for the most part it was okay. It wasn't dreadful, it wasn't bad at all. It was actually pretty okay. So functionality, it works quite well. Poor design though. Its design is kind of dull to look at. It's not very great looking. It's got quite a high ground clearance for something that's meant to lift robots, and what's weirder is that this is by the same team who would go on to create Tough as Nails, which is an absolutely gorgeous and wonderfully designed robot. How the fuck did they get from this to Tough as Nails? You know, it's a wonderful evolution, but wow. Arena Killer, I'm going to put it in the effective but poor design. It was an okay robot, all things considered. It's not dreadful, but its design is hideous. And especially in the German Wars, like, they managed to make it look worse in the German series. I don't know how, but it looks even uglier with that flipper plate. Ansgar's Revenge. Now, Ansgar is a robot we first saw in Extreme 1, and it appears again in Series 7. This is the middle ground robot. This is the second one, and I quite like the look of Ansgar. Ansgar looks great, and even the weaponry looks wonderful. Unfortunately, Ansgar... it wasn't very reliable. It wasn't very good. Which is a real shame, especially because the Extreme 1 Ansgar, which looked kind of awkward, was actually very functional. And the Series 7 Ansgar wasn't too bad either. So, and it's weird because I think this is actually probably the best looking Ansgar. Of all the Ansgar machines, this is probably the best looking, and yet it's the least effective. It's kind of depressing how this is the best looking one, but it's the worst in terms of effectiveness. So, in other words, great design, ineffective though. So, for the German series, there's only going to be 2 robots that are going to get the S tier. I'm just going to say that right now. And one of them is Black Hole. Black Hole, fantastic machine. The double flywheel discs, brutal. They tear robots apart. They tear chunks out. They flip them up in the air. They're that powerful. The design, it's a wedge design, but they managed to make the wedge design look so unique. It almost looks like Nightmare or Spirit of Nightmare, but with like flywheels attached to the back end instead of like a flipper. You know, it almost looks like that. And I love Spirit of Nightmare. I love Nightmare. This is once again a very good looking robot. I love the little face on the front, back. I don't know which end is considered the front and which end is considered the back. I guess the flywheels is technically the front. But yeah, just a gorgeous looking robot, very powerful robot. And it goes to show that the Germans could have created some really wonderful machines. It just was let down by constant like bugs and reliability problems. It's rather depressing, all things considered. But what a devastating robot when he went up against it. It just tore robots apart, threw them in the air. That's how powerful this thing was. It tore chunks out. Black Hole, definitely the best robot in the German Robot Wars. Definitely best in design and functionality. Del Dog. Uh, it's a round robot. I think it was meant to be like a ring spinner, so it was meant to have the middle section was meant to rotate and spin and hit things off of rubber robots. It didn't do that. It was mostly just rammed into other robots. It's invertible, but at the same time it has that big like antenna, which is covered by hardened plastic, so the invertibility probably would have been nullified. This is F tier. I'm sorry. This is just F tier. Del Dog sucks. Now, on to what is a robot which I find extremely underrated, and I feel like if it was given better reliability, I feel like Golem would have been a far, far better machine. Like, Golem is a very good looking machine. I love the look of Golem. Golem is beautiful to look at. The hourglass, like, Rambot design, the face at the front, the spikes everywhere, the color scheme, everything about Golem works. Its reliability, though, it was not very good. Like, it was able to move about for the first few, like, moments, and then it would just die. It would just die over, like, the slightest of, like, taps. And it's funny, because Golem was then used as a drop zone item later on, which is kind of funny to think about. Yeah, Golem, I love Golem, but Golem, it was just unreliable. It was an unreliable mess for something that was absolutely fantastic to look at. Wonderful design. Hydrotech. Hydrotech is... I love the sort of checkerboard pattern metal. I love the scrappiness of it. It sort of looks like a miniature, like, Dead Metal looking robot. I mean, it doesn't look like Dead Metal because it hasn't got the claws and the saw. What the hell am I talking about? But I mean it in that sort of, like, purposeful, scrappy look. And, you know, this Swedish robot, which is in a German series, yep. Although saying that, the Brits had plenty of different international robots. But I digress. Like, I like the look of it. In terms of functionality, I don't think its lifter really worked all that much. It did work a little bit. It wasn't too terribly reliable. It definitely made up for it for its ramming attacks and speed. It was definitely an aggressive robot, and it was able to be durable for the most part. Like, it was able to survive Black Hole for quite some time before it just completely, like, disintegrated. Hydrotech, I think, is an A rank. It's definitely one of the better machines in the German wars. It's definitely a good-looking robot. It's definitely a functional and really well done robot. It just misses out. That's all I'm going to say. Junkyard Queen. Junkyard Queen, I like the design. I like the design a lot. It's funny because I used to get Junkyard Queen confused with several other robots because there's several robots which look like Junkyard Queen. There's one that was in live events around the same time, which I thought, like, failed to qualify. I forgot what it's called. And then I believe Craig Danby created a robot called Noisy Cricket. That, for some reason, I kept confusing with this one. Like, Junkyard Queen is a very visually nice robot, even though Noisy Cricket doesn't even look like it. What the hell am I talking about? There is another robot. I don't remember the name of it, but it looked exactly like Junkyard Queen. It wasn't called Junkyard Queen, but it looked exactly like it. It's the same looking robot. Junkyard Queen looks great. It's infamous for being so heavy that Mr. Psycho actually fell over because Junkyard Queen was too heavy, if that makes sense. Functionality, though. Junkyard Queen didn't work. Like, this is the thing. Most of these German robots, they had their design quite well, but they just didn't work. Probably the weakest of the designs, mind, but it just, yeah. Not perfect. Not perfect is actually one of the better German machines. It could actually move about. It actually could move for at least a centimetre before it died. It's a very colourful looking machine. I love the colour scheme, the black and the red. I believe it was technically a super heavyweight that just got entered because they didn't have enough competitors. They did have a lot more, by the way. There were a lot more German competitors, but for some reason, they just failed to work. Like, the German series must have been absolutely cursed. Like, what the fuck happened? Like, everything just seemed to it just didn't work for them. Like, Heat A, none of the robots worked. you watch basically 3 minutes of dead robots standing there. The house robots had to do all the action. Like, it must have been cursed, but not perfect. Despite its name, and ironically, I am going to put it in A ranking. It was a very good robot. It's quite speedy across the arena. It was invertible. It was able to push robots about. I don't think its weaponry ever really worked, to be fair, but it looked great. It functioned great. I liked it. I'm going to put it above Hydrotech slightly because I think Hydrotech, as great as it was, it's not as good as not perfect. Not perfect. It deserved it. It got to the grand final, I believe, and I believe it got like third overall. So it was a very good robot, all things considered. Son of Armageddon was the only robot from Hite that actually worked, I believe. Which, yes, that is... Like, I honestly want people to just watch the German Robot Wars, because you'll understand why I'm like taking the piss and saying it's absolutely awful. Because if you watch it, you need to see to believe how dreadful it was, how every robot fucking sucked. Son of Armageddon was the only robot from Heat A that worked, I believe. It was the only one that got to the grand final legitimately. And it's very ugly. It's a massive, oversized box with exposed armor because it was too top heavy. And a weird looking flipper, which I guess worked. Son of Armageddon is just a very ugly looking robot. I think it's uglier than Arena Killer, but at least it was able to function. And now on to Thorgrim. Now, Thorgrim is one of those robots that is absolutely terrible. It was absolutely shit. It's more remembered because of how brutal it was given a send-off. Basically, Matilda came in and just... It reduced Thorgrim into itty-bitty dust particles. It was destroyed. And for very good reason. It didn't move, it didn't do anything, it died straight away. It was a dead robot standing. It was a DRS. And yet, despite all that, Thorgrim had a very good looking design. Like, I will say this, Thorgrim looks beautiful. It looks stunning. I love the look of it. I love the flywheel look. It looks like something that looks deadly if you were to ignore the fact that it didn't move and got obliterated straight away. All the like big spanly flags is great. The color scheme is wonderful. I think the color scheme looks brilliant. The bright orange, wonderful look. I think this is a very good looking robot. It just didn't work. It's one of those robots which I have a guilty pleasure for. It's shit, but it's shit in the sense that I like it. That sounds really wrong. Jesus Christ. I don't mean it in that sense. So, the other S-tier robot is Tsunami. Now, Tsunami we know more from Series 7 because of how brutal it looked in Series 7 and the absolutely fantastic fight against Exterminator. A controversial opinion, perhaps, but I actually quite like the design or the paint scheme for Tsunami here more so than Series 7 1. The Series 7 1 looked a little less like a Tsunami, and the name wasn't really being presented across as much as the German version, which I love the black, the shiny black, the Tsunami tide. The flipper was very functional, very good robot. It wasn't as powerful as the Series 7 version technically, but it was still great nonetheless. And then, it was just a wonderful robot. Like, it's so telling when there's two robots that just dominated everyone that they were going to be in the grand final, because there was no way, any of these other German robots were ever going to go anywhere. But Tsunami and Black Hole definitely were just wonderful robots, and their final fight was probably the only fight that was legitimately good. Not like a Destructathon like the Hydrotech Black Hole fight or the humorously bad fight with Thorgrim. It was actually a legitimate great fight with two robots actually battling out and if you're beating the shit out of each other. You know, wonderful robot, absolutely wonderful robot. I think Tsunami is fantastic. Series 1 is technically much better in terms of functionality, but in design wise, I think this one's technically better. Controversial opinion perhaps, but who cares? And finally, we have Tyke. Tyke. It's not as ugly as Dog. I'll give it that. But I think blue and yellow is such an ugly combination of colours. I probably insulted every single country that has blue and yellow in their flag. Sorry about that. But I just don't think blue and yellow look good together. It just looks hideous. It's just, you know, it used to be even worse, technically speaking, because it used to just be just a block of yellow, and then they gave the blue stripes, which I guess upped it a little bit. But Tyke is another one of these robots which is a dead robot standing. It didn't really do anything. It just stood there dead from the get-go, didn't really move about. And it didn't move about in the other fight, or the other fight. 3 fights and it didn't move about. It was fucking useless. It was fucking useless. I don't even know what Tyke was meant to have done. I don't even know, like, what weaponry it should have. Like, it's such a dull robot in every sense of the word. But it's not as bad as Dog. That's the thing. I think Dog is far worse. So, that is it. German says, very shortly done. Only 12 robots. What a dreadful series. Absolutely dreadful series. Don't watch it. Like, just see some of the best fights compilations for it, but don't actually watch. It is the worst Robot Wars series ever. Like, people might have their opinions on, like, saying, oh well, the first Wars was kind of dull, second Wars was, you know, just a continuation of the first Wars, or Series 9 was too spinner heavy, Series 7 was too flipper heavy. You know, people might have their opinions on what are the worst series. You know, Nickelodeon was too childish. But objectively and subjectively, German series was the worst. There is no doubt in my mind this thing was absolutely shit. Only 2 robots are actually really good. There are 2 which are decent, that being Hydrotech and Not Perfect. They're both great looking. They're both great looking and they're both quite functional. Son of Armageddon was functional, so was Arena Killer, but they just were very ugly. But then you have a lot of great designs which just didn't work, and then you got like 2 very awful designs, one which is slightly better than the other, but that's not saying much. So yeah, very quick video, I guess, compared to the others, because there's not a lot to talk about. Hope you enjoyed this, and I don't know what the next Robot Wars video is. My stomach is growling. I'm hungry. But I don't know what the next Robot Wars video will be. I don't know what the next tier list video will be, because who knows? It might be Series 2, or it might be one of the reboots. It might even be Nickelodeon. It might be the US. It might be the Dutch. You'll just have to wait and see. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this edition, and I'll see you next time.